Rockets on my back.
Founder and car expert here at Motorenn, and I'm sitting in front of a Mclaren 765Lt in a beautiful amethyst black MSO paint color. This is a fantastic supercar, and I'm pretty excited to introduce you to it and tell you about how it's holding up and who this car is for. Ultimately, the Mclaren 765 is an upgrade over a 720S and is really geared towards that auto enthusiast who wants the ultimate track package supercar for under $500,000. Really are not going to get too many other options as good as this in that price range unless you're stepping up over $1 million in many ways. Obviously, the 765LT is an upgrade on the Mclaren 720S. Key differences being in a lot of the aerodynamics as well as the power in terms of aerodynamics. What you're looking at is an updated front fascia, which can be made in carbon fiber. You're looking at upgraded side skirts, and you're looking at a much larger rear spoiler, as well as a quad tip exhaust system that adds a lot of visual appeal to the car. And then finally, you do have front louvers over the front wheels to help with the downforce and the release of the pressure in the wheel arches. It is, for some people, maybe a little bit too minor of a visual upgrade over the 720, so it can be confusing for the layperson as they look at them side by side, but for the enthusiast who knows what they're looking for, the 765 has significant visual appeal. In terms of performance-wise, you're having an upgrade from the 720S's 710 horsepower to the 765's 755 horsepower, so about a 45 horsepower bump. And that does make itself pronounced in the vehicle in terms of both how frantic the drive experience is. They also lighten it a little bit, and then you also have a bit of an upgrade to the suspension system, and so that gives the overall more track-oriented feel to the vehicle. The 765LT is also optionable with a couple of track-oriented sport seat systems that are not available in the McLaren 720S. That means that you can option the P1 sport seats or the Senna sport seats, with the Senna sport seats being probably my choice in terms of how awesome and how cool they look. And that really does add to the flavor and feel of this vehicle. It makes it special and stand out over the 720S. At the end of the day, in terms of track performance, both from some of your major automotive magazines, there is a demarcation between what the 765 does and what the 720S can do. And so it does feel like there is a substantial upgrade for your money's worth on the vehicle. Some key options to look out for on this vehicle really are the roof scoop and the MSO Club Sport packs. The roof scoop is a very aesthetically desirable option. It makes it look really kind of F1 or, you know, kind of underground race car-ish. The one downside of the roof scoop is actually not that functional. It does pipe into the engine compartment, but it does not feed directly into the intakes for ram air effect, unlike from what I recall the 600LT, where the roof scoop was fully functional and rammed air into the engine. On the 765, it does not do that. And then the other option to look out for is the MSO Club Sport and Club Sport Pro Pack. What that does is add a lot of carbon fiber on the exterior. It adds telemetry with 3 cameras on the vehicle for your track days. And then most crucially, it allows you to option the Senna race seats on the vehicle that give it that real track hypercar feel. And what the Pro Pack does is it also adds in a titanium harness bar and a 6-point harness to the vehicle as well. So it really kind of takes it to the next level in terms of track-oriented weapon. In terms of key issues to look out for, these have been relatively limited in number. We haven't heard too much, but what we would expect, because it is a derivative of the 720S, it should have many of the same issues that plague the 720S, although by this time, McLaren has addressed one of the most common ones, which is the suspension accumulators. That is, on the 720S, the older style suspension accumulators would often leak. They have a revised version that is much less prone to that, and from what our understanding is that revised version is also on the 765, so we think that the 765 should be significantly better off for those common problems as well. When we look at what the 765LT competes against, well, look, when you're dealing with $400,000 to $500,000, you have a lot of choices, but in many ways the 765LT does stand alone in where it resides within the supercar echelon. Immediately coming to mind are the 911 GT2 RS, as well as the Mercedes AMG GTR Black Series. Both of those cars in this same price point of about $400,000 to $500,000. Both also very track-oriented weapons. Depending on the racetrack you're looking at, one car has set the lap record over the other car within these three. But in my esteem and opinion, the 765LT really just adds an extra level of visual appeal, that kind of McLaren supercar panache that Mercedes and Porsche don't really bring to the table. Although, look, at the end of the day, Porsche people like their Porsches, and 911 GT2 RSs are commanding strong value because they are great cars. And the Mercedes AMG GTR Black Series is the last of a breed for Mercedes, and so that has its own special components as well. Additionally, at this price point, of course, you could be looking at the Lamborghini Aventador series, in particular the Aventador S, maybe the little bit older SV at a similar price point to the 765LT. Performance-wise, the Aventador just doesn't compete very well. It's not as agile on the track, it drives much heavier, and it's just not as fast at 0 to 60, 100 mile and quarter mile. But the Lamborghini Aventador, it does have that iconic Lamborghini V12 sound to it, and it has the iconic Lamborghini doors. The McLaren 765 has dihedral doors, but look, Lambo doors are Lambo doors at the end of the day, and the Aventador just has great presence. And McLaren ultimately, in my esteem, just doesn't come to that level in terms of overall road presence. But again, coming back to the top of that, they're ultimately very different cars and appeal to very different demographics. And then finally, look, if you're looking at the 765LT, you're probably also looking at the McLaren 720S and thinking, hey, I could save half my money because the 720S retails between $200,000 to $260,000 depending on the year and the mileage in terms of a good condition McLaren 720S in today's market. And then you could also be looking at the McLaren 750S, which is retailing roughly at about the same price point that 765s are. I think the two things to call out are, one, on the McLaren 720S, of course, the 765 is just a nice upgrade over it. You get more horsepower, you get more aesthetic appeal, you get a little bit of a better track performance out of the package, and it is a more unique vehicle. Is it worth the extra money? For the collector, it is. If you're just looking to get into a very appealing hypercar, you may very well be better suited to stay and save your money on the McLaren 720S. When it comes down to the 750S, it's interesting in that a lot of the reviews have shown that the most recent iteration on this series is actually underperforming. It's not as quick necessarily, even though the paper power figures should imply it is quicker. So far, it seems a lot of the reviewers, the magazines, have not necessarily gotten results commensurate with what you'd expect out of the 750S. So for paying for something in that same price range, for a bit of a different front fascia, for a bit of an updated interior infotainment, but potentially a lower performance level, I'm not as enthused about the McLaren 750S. So when it comes down to getting the ultimate of the vehicles at this price point, the 765 is very much so something to consider adding into your garage, especially if you can get one in the spec that really appeals to you and it's something that you find you'll be enjoying driving both on the racetrack or potentially just up in some twisty roads, because that's where this car ultimately belongs. Now, as we look forward to the future of where the 765LT may go, I think the values may be holding at this point. There's a number of tailwinds that will push its value and keep it up a little bit. Partly that the 750S and the Artura have not necessarily been as well received in the market. 750S performance is not quite there to really kind of dethrone the 765LT. So I think that will help its positioning. And as we go forward, we're looking at more hybrid systems, and that I think will also provide a stabilization for the 765's price point and valuation. And then from its competitors, again, Ferrari's come out with the 296. Lamborghini's new Huracan replacement is coming out with a hybrid system in a V8 package. And, of course, the Lamborghini does have the Revolto with a hybrid V12, but that's at a very different price point. And so I think those factors coming in are going to be good for where the 765 heads in the next few years. So if you're getting one, I think you'll be relatively protected against the depreciation you're seeing across a lot of cars these days, especially some of the hybrid systems like the Ferrari SF90. And there may be some appreciation in store as well, because it does kind of represent the last of a breed for McLaren. So I hope this kind of content was helpful. I'd love to talk to you more about supercars and kind of how they fit, who they're for, and where they may go in the market based on what we're seeing here on the ground at Motorenn in our exotic car dealership in Los Angeles. Absolutely, we deal with these cars every day and clients all the time, so we get a lot of opinions and insights into how the market's trending. So if you like this type of content, please like and subscribe, and happy to see you on the next video.